The silver moons of Virelia cast long shadows across the ceremonial grounds as Kira Natari, first blade of the southern clans, was dragged before the Council of Elders. Her violet eyes blazed with defiance despite the ceremonial chains binding her wrists, chains meant for willing participants in the sacred bonding ritual, not for punishment. Kira Natari, you stand accused of questioning the Council's decision to mine the sacred mountains, announced Elder Torvak, his elongated features twisted with smug satisfaction. Such defiance cannot go unpunished. Kira's scaled skin shimmered with anger in the moonlight. The mountains hold the essence of our ancestors. Your mining agreement with the Imperial Federation will destroy our heritage for profit. Laughter rippled through the gathered crowd, not the reaction she'd expected. Elder Torvak's expression shifted to cruel amusement. Since you care so much about preservation, he said, gesturing to the guards, we've arranged a special punishment. The crowd parted, and Kira's hearts nearly stopped. A human male was brought forward, looking as confused as she felt terrified. Humans were considered the weakest species in the galactic community, physically frail, emotionally unstable, and technologically dependent on other races. To bond with one was to accept eternal weakness. Meet Ambassador Lucas Reeve, Elder Torvak announced. Your new mate. The crowd erupted in mocking laughter. A mating bond with a human was worse than exile, it was a living death sentence for a warrior. No clan would follow her, no battle squadron would accept her. You can't do this, Kira hissed, straining against her bonds. The ritual requires consent. Actually, Elder Solara interjected, her voice dripping with false sympathy, ancient law allows the Council to arrange bonds for those who threaten tribal unity. We're simply preserving tradition. Lucas stepped forward, his pale skin looking sickly in the purple light of the ceremonial grounds. I was told this was a diplomatic ceremony to strengthen relations, he said, his deep voice surprisingly steady. What exactly is happening here? No one bothered to answer him. The ceremonial priests approached with the sacred bonding stones, twin crystals that would link their life forces permanently once activated. Among her people, such bonds were reserved for the most compatible warriors, creating battle pairs whose strength and telepathic connection made them invincible on the battlefield. With a human, the bond would be a mockery, a constant reminder of weakness. This is your last chance, Kira, whispered Elder Torvak. Renounce your opposition to the mining agreement, pledge loyalty to the Council's decisions, and we will find you a proper Vorii mate. Kira looked from the elder to the human. Lucas stood straight-backed and dignified despite his confusion. There was something in his eyes, not fear, but determination. Still, he was human. Weak. Bonding with him would end her status among her people forever. But renouncing her principles would be a different kind of death. I will not be silenced, she said through clenched teeth. Elder Torvak's smile widened. The ritual begins. The priests placed the crystals against their hearts, Kira's left heart, to be precise, as her species had too. A searing pain shot through her body as the crystal activated, creating a connection that would bind her to this alien forever. Throughout the ritual, Lucas remained silent, his eyes locked with hers. As the connection formed between them, Kira felt an unexpected surge, not weakness, but something else. Something she couldn't identify. When it was done, the chains were removed. The crowd began to disperse, their entertainment concluded. Enjoy your human mate, First Blade, Elder Torvak mocked. Former First Blade, I should say. As the elders departed, Kira and Lucas stood alone in the ceremonial grounds, bound together by forces neither understood, united by a ritual meant to break her spirit. What happens now? Lucas asked quietly. Kira turned away, unable to look at the symbol of her disgrace. Now, she said bitterly, we both learn to live with this mistake. But as they left the ceremonial grounds, neither noticed the ancient crystals embedded near their hearts beginning to glow with an intensity that hadn't been seen in generations. Lucas followed Kira through the twisting corridors of what she curtly informed him was her dwelling chamber, a sparse apartment carved into the living stone of the Vorii settlement. The air was thick with tension and unsaid words. "You'll sleep there," Kira gestured to a small alcove. "Don't touch anything. Don't speak to anyone unless spoken to first. And don't ever mention our connection." Lucas studied her, noting the rigid posture and the way her scaled skin rippled with suppressed emotion. "I understand you didn't want this," he said carefully. "Neither did I. But perhaps we should discuss." "There's nothing to discuss," Kira snapped, her violet eyes flashing. "This bond was meant to humiliate me, to strip me of my position and power. The elders believe that by tying me to a human, they've neutralized any threat I pose to their mining agreement." Lucas absorbed this, his diplomatic training kicking in. "So I'm your punishment because humans are considered weak?" Kira paused, seeming to realize how her words sounded. "Your species is physically inferior to most galactic races. That's simply fact." "Facts can be misleading," Lucas replied evenly. "Humans have survived and thrived because we're adaptable, not because we're the strongest or fastest." Before Kira could respond, a deafening alarm echoed through the settlement. Her head snapped up, her body instantly alert. "What is it?" Lucas asked. "Proximity alert. Something's entered our atmosphere without clearance." Kira was already moving, grabbing her ceremonial blade from its wall mount. "Stay here. You'll only get in the way." Lucas caught her arm. "I'm coming with you. Like it or not, we're connected now." She hesitated, then nodded curtly. "Fine. Just don't." The world exploded around them. One moment they were standing in Kira's dwelling, the next, they were thrown across the room as the ceiling partially collapsed. Dust filled the air, and the screams of the wounded filtered through the settlement. Lucas pulled himself up, ears ringing. Through the newly formed hole in the ceiling, he could see ships, sleek, black vessels with pulsing red weapon systems, descending on the settlement. Imperial forces, Kira coughed, extracting herself from the debris. They weren't supposed to arrive for negotiations until next cycle. This is an attack, not a diplomatic mission. Lucas helped her to her feet, noticing blood streaming from a cut on her forehead. The elders invited an Imperial delegation? For the mining rights, she confirmed grimly. But this is something else. They made their way outside to chaos. Vorii warriors were engaging with Imperial troops in the settlement center, but they were clearly outmatched. The Imperial soldiers wore advanced combat suits that seemed to anticipate the Vorii fighting style. "They knew we were coming," one of the warriors shouted to Kira as they approached. "They have our combat data programmed into their systems." Kira's face darkened. "Betrayal. Someone on the council sold our tactical information." As she spoke, 3 Imperial soldiers noticed them and raised their weapons. Lucas reacted instinctively, shoving Kira behind a stone column as energy blasts scorched the ground where they'd stood. "Stay down," he commanded, surprising himself with his tone. He scanned their surroundings, mind racing through possibilities. "Those soldiers' suits have targeting systems linked to their helmets." Kira looked at him with surprise. "How could you possibly know that?" "I've studied Imperial technology as part of my diplomatic training," Lucas explained. "And I can see the projection patterns in their visors." More blasts hit their shelter, stone fragments raining down on them. "We're pinned down," Kira growled in frustration. Lucas glanced at a nearby water distribution pipe. "Not for long." "Can you hit that pipe with your blade?" "Of course I can, but trust me." Something in his voice, or perhaps something in their bond, made her nod. With a fluid motion, she threw her blade, severing the pipe. Water gushed out, creating a spreading puddle. "Now what?" she demanded. Lucas grabbed a damaged electrical conduit that had been exposed in the attack. "Now we create a diversion." He thrust the live wire into the water just as the Imperial soldiers advanced. The electricity surged through the puddle, short-circuiting their combat suits. The soldiers convulsed and fell, their systems overloaded. Kira stared at Lucas in astonishment. That was unexpected. Adaptability, he reminded her with a grim smile. "Come on, we need to find safe ground and figure out what's happening." They moved through the settlement, Lucas continuing to surprise Kira with his tactical insights. When they encountered more Imperial troops, he noticed patterns in their formations and helped her anticipate their movements. When a building collapsed, trapping several Vorii children, it was Lucas who quickly calculated the safest way to extract them from the rubble. As they reached the settlement's edge, they encountered Elder Torvak fleeing toward a private shuttle. "Elder!" Kira called out. "What is happening? Why are Imperial forces attacking us?" Torvak's face contorted with fear and guilt. "The agreement changed. They don't want to mine the mountains, they want to control them entirely. The mountains contain more than ancestral essence, they hold crystals like your bonding stones, with power the Imperials wish to weaponize. And you agreed to this?" Kira's voice was deadly quiet. "They threatened to destroy us if we refused," Torvak said, not meeting her eyes. "Some of us made arrangements. For our safety." While sacrificing everyone else, Lucas interjected, disgust evident in his voice. More explosions rocked the settlement behind them. Torvak turned to flee, but Kira moved with lightning speed, blocking his path. "You're not going anywhere," she said, her blade at his throat. "You'll stand with your people." "There's no standing against them," Torvak cried. "They're too powerful." Lucas stepped forward, his mind racing with possibilities. No force is unbeatable. Every system has vulnerabilities. Kira looked at him, really seeing him for perhaps the first time. Not as a weak human, but as an ally with different but valuable strengths. "We need to get to the ancestral caverns," she said suddenly. "There are ancient defenses there that might help us." The crystal near Lucas's heart pulsed warmly, resonating with Kira's as if in agreement. "Lead the way," he said, no longer the diplomatic prisoner but a partner in this unexpected battle. "We'll face this together." As they raced toward the sacred mountains, leaving the cowering elder behind, neither fully understood how their forced bond was already reshaping them both, and how it would soon reshape their entire world. The sacred forests of Varelia stretched before Kira and Lucas, ancient trees with luminescent bark casting an ethereal glow across their path. They had been traveling for hours since escaping the settlement, the sounds of battle fading behind them as they ventured deeper into territory few Vorii ever entered. "The Whisperwood," Kira explained, her voice hushed with reverence despite their circumstances. "It said our ancestors first communed with the planet's spirit here, where the veil between physical and spiritual is thinnest." Lucas stepped carefully over exposed roots that seemed to pulse with inner light. "It's alive, somehow. I can feel it." "You shouldn't be able to," Kira said, giving him a strange look. "Humans don't possess the sensory capabilities to detect the forest's energy." Lucas touched the crystal embedded near his heart, which had been warming steadily since they entered the woods. "I think our bond might be changing that." They continued in silence, both uncomfortable with the implications. The forced mating bond, meant as punishment and humiliation, was evolving into something neither of them understood. As nightfall approached, they made camp in a small clearing. Kira efficiently gathered bioluminescent fungi to provide light while Lucas created a shelter from fallen branches. They worked without speaking, yet somehow anticipated each other's movements with unnerving precision. "You're thinking too loudly," Kira finally said as they sat beside their small heat source, a stone activated by Kira's touch that radiated warmth without flame. Lucas looked up, startled. What? Your worry about the settlement. Your confusion about this bond. Your curiosity about me. Kira's violet eyes reflected the blue glow of the fungi. I can feel it all. Lucas shifted uncomfortably. That's invasive. It's what the mating bond does, she replied with a hint of bitterness. It's why our warriors who choose it train for years to control the mental connection. We weren't given that luxury. Lucas took a deep breath. Then perhaps we should stop fighting it and try to understand it instead. If we're going to help your people, we need every advantage. Kira stared at him for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. What do you propose? Let's start with something simple. Share a memory with me, something about your world that might help me understand it better. Kira hesitated, then closed her eyes. Lucas felt a strange sensation, like a door opening in his mind, and suddenly he was experiencing rather than just seeing. A young Kira climbing the sacred mountains, feeling the pulse of ancestral energy beneath her hands. The exhilaration of her first successful hunt. The pride when she was named First Blade, youngest in generations. The crushing responsibility of protecting her clan. The images faded, leaving Lucas breathless. That was incredible. Your turn, Kira said quietly. Lucas closed his eyes and thought of Earth, its oceans and forests, its crowded cities and quiet villages. He shared the memory of his decision to become a diplomat after witnessing a conflict that could have been avoided with better understanding. He showed her humanity's resilience in the face of challenges, their creativity when confronting problems too big for physical strength alone. When the connection faded, Kira was looking at him differently. Your species compensates for physical limitations with remarkable adaptability, she acknowledged. I begin to see why the elders feared your influence. And I understand why you fight so hard to protect your heritage, Lucas replied. These mountains aren't just resources, they're the foundation of your culture. They spent hours exchanging memories and knowledge, the bond between them strengthening with each shared thought. By morning, something fundamental had shifted. They moved together with greater coordination, communicated with fewer words, sensed dangers before they materialized. As they approached the ancestral caverns the next day, Lucas stopped suddenly, a chill running through him. We're being followed, he said, knowing it with certainty though he couldn't explain how. Kira nodded, already reaching for her blade. 3 trackers. Imperial specialties. They moved as one, taking cover behind a massive tree trunk. Through their strengthened bond, Lucas could sense Kira formulating a plan, calculating angles and movements. Without words, he understood his role. When the Imperial trackers entered the clearing, Lucas stepped out first, the seemingly weaker target to draw their attention. The moment they focused on him, Kira attacked from above, having scaled the tree with incredible speed. 2 trackers fell before they could react. The third fired an energy weapon that Lucas somehow knew was coming, allowing him to dive aside with milliseconds to spare. Kira dispatched the final tracker with efficient precision, then turned to Lucas with newfound respect. You moved before he fired, she observed. You couldn't have seen him targeting you. I felt it through you, Lucas explained. You saw his finger tense on the trigger mechanism. Kira nodded slowly. The bond is becoming more than they intended. They continued toward the caverns, both silently processing this evolution. When they finally reached the entrance, a towering arch of crystal-embedded stone, they paused, something drawing their attention to an ancient inscription above the doorway. I can't read it, Lucas said, studying the flowing symbols carved into the rock. What does it say? Kira traced the writing with her fingers, her expression troubled. It's in ancient Vorii. It speaks of a prophecy. When 2 worlds join through the heart crystal bond, old barriers fall and new strength rises. The divided become whole, the weak become mighty, the lost become found. A prophecy about our species working together? Lucas asked, surprised. Impossible, Kira insisted, though with less conviction than before. These writings are thousands of cycles old, from before we knew humans existed. As if in response to her words, both their bonding crystals pulsed with light, sending warmth spreading through their bodies. The crystal formations within the cave entrance began to glow in response, illuminating a path deeper into the mountain. The crystals are communicating, Lucas whispered in awe. Kira touched her chest where the bonding crystal rested beneath her skin. The elders never mentioned this possibility. The mating bond was only ever discussed as a warrior tradition, a tactical advantage in battle. Perhaps there's more to your history than the current elders know, Lucas suggested. Or more than they've shared. They ventured into the caverns, guided by the responding crystals embedded in the walls. The deeper they went, the stronger their bond seemed to grow. Lucas found himself able to sense the energies Kira described, while she began interpreting patterns and technologies with his analytical perspective. In the heart of the mountain, they discovered a chamber unlike any other, a perfect dome of crystal that hummed with power. At its center stood an ancient mechanism, part organic, part crystalline technology, dormant but intact. What is it? Lucas asked, though through their bond, he was already forming theories. A planetary defense system, Kira breathed, piecing together ancient knowledge with Lucas's technological understanding. Created by our ancestors but forgotten over generations. The elders must not know it exists, or they would never have risked bringing Imperial forces here. Lucas approached the mechanism, studying its configuration. It requires activation by both crystal types, he realized. The ones resonating with yours, and the ones responding to mine. Kira looked at him, understanding dawning in her violet eyes. Not a Vorii and a human specifically. But two different energetic signatures working in harmony, Lucas finished her thought. The bond wasn't your punishment, Kira. It might be your people's salvation. As they stood together in the crystal chamber, the full meaning of their forced union began to unfold before them, not a curse, but a key that could unlock ancient powers and forge a new path for both their peoples. If they could master it in time. It needs to be activated simultaneously, Lucas said, his fingers tracing the ancient glyphs surrounding the crystal mechanism. After 3 days in the heart of the mountain, they had deciphered much of the forgotten technology. One Vorii, one human, or at least, the energetic signatures of both. Kira nodded, her violet eyes reflecting the pulsing light of the crystals. But activation alone isn't enough. We need to bring this knowledge back to our people, both our peoples. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. The bond meant to shame Kira had revealed an ancient alliance between humans and Vorii so old it had been erased from both species' histories. The crystal chamber held records showing that millennia ago, the two races had worked together to create a defense system that protected both worlds from a common enemy. The Imperial forces don't know what they're really after, Lucas said. They think the crystals are just weapons, but they're part of something far more complex. Their connection had deepened to where completing each other's thoughts had become natural. Through their strengthened bond, Lucas had absorbed centuries of Vorii cultural knowledge, while Kira had gained human analytical perspectives that had been alien to her before. We need to return to the settlement, Kira decided, standing up from where they had been studying the ancient records. The longer we hide, the more damage the Imperials will cause. Lucas caught her wrist, the physical contact sending a spark of energy between them through their bond. They'll be expecting us. We need allies. My people won't follow me anymore, Kira reminded him bitterly. Not with this bond. Are you sure about that? Lucas asked. Things have changed. The Imperials are attacking your people. The elders have betrayed them. Maybe a different kind of leadership is exactly what they need now. Kira was silent for a long moment. There are some warriors who questioned the mining agreement. Warriors who might listen, especially if we can prove the ancestral legends were true. And I can contact the human outpost on your second moon, Lucas added. There are scientists there who would recognize the importance of this discovery, who would help us rather than exploit it. Their plan formed quickly, enhanced by their ability to share thoughts and strategies without speaking. They would split up briefly, Kira to gather loyal Vorii warriors, Lucas to make contact with the human scientific team, and then reunite to confront both the Imperial forces and the corrupt elders. As they prepared to leave the safety of the crystal caverns, Kira hesitated at the entrance. The bond, when others see how it's changed us, they might fear it more than respect it. Lucas understood her concern. They were becoming something neither fully human nor fully Vorii. The crystals near their hearts occasionally glowed visibly through their skin. They moved in perfect synchronization. Sometimes one would speak with the other's knowledge. Then we need to show them its purpose, Lucas said simply. Not as a weakness, but as the strength it was always meant to be. They emerged from the mountains to find the situation worse than they had feared. The Imperial forces had established control over most of the settlement, using the elders as puppet administrators while they extracted crystals from the sacred sites. Many Vorii had been imprisoned or forced to work in dangerous mining operations. Kira's rage flowed through their bond, hot and sharp. Lucas steadied her with a thought, sending calm determination back to her. We'll free them, he promised silently. But we need to be strategic. They parted at the forest's edge, each with their mission. The separation was physically painful, a side effect of their deepened bond they hadn't anticipated. Still, they persevered, knowing the success of their plan depended on both tasks being completed. Lucas made his way to a communication outpost, using skills borrowed from Kira to move with stealth and speed that no human should possess. When he reached the facility, he quickly overcame the Imperial guards using a combination of human ingenuity and Vorii combat techniques. Once inside, he established contact with Dr. Eliza Marsh, lead xenobiologist at the human outpost on Virelia's moon. Lucas? We thought you were dead. Dr. Marsh exclaimed when his face appeared on her screen. The diplomatic mission was reported destroyed. I'm very much alive, Lucas assured her, but I need your help urgently. I've discovered something that changes everything we thought we knew about human-Vorii relations. He explained quickly, showing her the ancient records he'd documented from the crystal caverns. Dr. Marsh's scientific curiosity was immediately piqued. This confirms theories some of us have had for years, she said excitedly. There have always been strange similarities between our species that couldn't be explained by convergent evolution alone. But Lucas, what you're suggesting, a joint operation against Imperial forces, that's beyond my authority. Then get me someone with authority, Lucas insisted. Lives are at stake, and this discovery belongs to both our species. Meanwhile, Kira moved through hidden pathways known only to the most elite warriors, contacting those she had once led. Many were skeptical at first, seeing the glow of the crystal through her skin and the changes in her movement and speech. You've become like them, accused Tarak, once her most loyal lieutenant. You're not Vorii anymore. I'm more Vorii than those who would sell our heritage for personal safety, Kira replied fiercely. And I've discovered truth in our oldest legends, the ones that speak of a time when humans and Vorii stood together as allies. She showed them the ancient combat forms she'd learned in the crystal chamber, techniques that combined Vorii strength with human adaptability, creating a fighting style more effective than either alone. Gradually, warriors began to listen. When she demonstrated her connection to the ancestral crystals, calling forth energies that no Vorii had wielded in generations, even the most doubtful were swayed. By the time she and Lucas reunited 3 days later, each had assembled a small but committed force, 23 Vorii warriors who had broken away from elder control, and 17 human scientists and security personnel who recognized the historical importance of their discovery. Their reunion was intense, the bond between them flaring with relief and renewed strength as they clasped hands in the forest clearing where their allies waited uncertainly, the two species eyeing each other with caution. "They don't trust each other," Lucas observed through their private mental connection. "Then we'll have to show them," Kira replied the same way. Together, they called the gathered forces to attention. Standing side by side, they demonstrated what their bond had created, a perfect melding of Vorii strength and human innovation. They shared the knowledge they had gleaned from the crystal chambers, showed how the ancient defense system required both species to work in concert. "This isn't about saving just the Vorii or just the humans," Lucas told the assembled group. "The Imperial forces threaten both our peoples, both our worlds. And together, we have the power to stop them." "Our ancestors knew this truth," Kira continued. "They built defenses that required our unified strength. Over time, that knowledge was lost, or deliberately hidden by those who feared what our unity might achieve. Slowly, cautiously, human scientists began sharing information with Vorii warriors. The warriors, in turn, demonstrated techniques for channeling the crystal energies that fascinated the scientists. A tentative alliance formed, forged by common purpose and ancient history. As night fell, they finalized their battle plan. The Imperial forces had concentrated their operations at the largest crystal extraction site, the very heart of the sacred mountains. There, the elders maintained their puppet governance, allowing the exploitation of resources they had once sworn to protect. "Dawn tomorrow," Kira told her warriors. "We reclaim our heritage. And forge a new future," Lucas added, addressing the humans. "One where our species remember their shared history." As the others prepared, Kira and Lucas stood apart, looking toward the mountains where destiny awaited. "Are you afraid?" Kira asked aloud, though she could feel his emotions through their bond. "Terrified," Lucas admitted with a small smile. "But also certain. Whatever happens tomorrow, this bond, this punishment that was meant to break you, has already changed everything." Kira reached out, her scaled fingers intertwining with his human ones. The crystals in their chests pulsed in synchronization, casting a glow that symbolized everything their forced union had become, not a curse, but the last, best hope for both their worlds. "Together, then," she said. "Always," he replied, the word carrying the weight of promise. Dawn approached, bringing with it the battle that would determine not just their fate, but the future of two civilizations on the brink of remembering their shared destiny. Dawn broke over the sacred mountains, painting the crystal spires in shades of amber and gold. From their position at the forest's edge, Kira and Lucas surveyed the Imperial mining operation that had desecrated the holiest site on Varelia. Massive extraction equipment tore into the living rock, Imperial soldiers patrolled the perimeter, and enslaved Vorii workers moved under the watchful eyes of overseers. "There," Kira whispered, pointing to a fortified structure near the largest excavation. "The elders will be inside, with the Imperial commander." Lucas nodded, feeling her rage and determination flowing through their bond. He sent back calm focus, creating a balanced resonance between them that had become their strength. "The central crystal chamber is beneath that ridge," he said, indicating a heavily guarded area where energy readings were strongest. "If we can reach it, we can activate the defense system." Around them, their unlikely alliance of Vorii warriors and human scientists made final preparations. The plan was daring, perhaps foolish, but it was their only hope. "It's time," Kira announced, addressing their combined forces. "Remember, we fight not just for Varelia or Earth, but for the truth of our shared history." The attack began with precision. Human scientists used technology to disrupt Imperial communications while Vorii warriors launched the first assault, targeting the perimeter guards with silent efficiency. Kira and Lucas moved through the chaos like twin shadows, their movements perfectly synchronized through their bond. When Imperial reinforcements poured from the central facility, Dr. Marsh activated the diversion they had prepared, a series of controlled crystal reactions that created spectacular energy discharges on the opposite side of the complex. As forces diverted to investigate, Kira and Lucas slipped inside the main structure with a small team of both species. Inside, they encountered Elder Torvak, his scales pale with fear as he cowered behind an Imperial commander, a tall, cybernetically enhanced human whose eyes widened at the sight of Lucas. "Ambassador Reeve," the commander said, surprise evident in his voice. "You were reported terminated." "Reports of my termination were premature," Lucas replied coolly, feeling Kira's appreciation for the human idiom through their bond. "What is this abomination?" the commander demanded, gesturing to the visible connection between them, the glowing crystals now pulsing visibly beneath their skin. "You've allowed yourself to be contaminated by alien biology." "Not contaminated," Lucas corrected. "Enlightened. These crystals aren't weapons to be harvested, Commander. They're keys to something far greater. The ancient defense system," Elder Torvak blurted out, earning a sharp look from the Imperial commander. "It's just a legend. A story to frighten children." Kira stepped forward, her violet eyes fixed on the Elder. "You knew. All this time, the Council knew the truth of our history with humans. Knowledge that threatened our way of life," Torvak defended weakly. "If our people learned that we once needed humans, that our greatest achievements came through cooperation rather than strength alone, it would have undermined everything. So you rewrote your history," Lucas realized aloud. "And my people likely did the same. Both species choosing to forget their alliance rather than acknowledge their interdependence." The Imperial commander had heard enough. With lightning speed, he activated a weapon embedded in his cybernetic arm, firing directly at Kira. Lucas moved without thinking, their bond allowing him to anticipate the attack. He shoved her aside, taking the blast across his shoulder. Pain seared through both of them, the bond transmitting Lucas's agony to Kira even as her enhanced healing began flowing back to him. They fell together, momentarily incapacitated. "Secure them," the commander ordered his troops. "The female is connected to the crystal network. We need her alive for extraction." As Imperial soldiers moved to obey, the building shook with a massive explosion from outside. The diversion had worked too well, destabilizing one of the crystal deposits and triggering a chain reaction. "The mountain is becoming unstable," one soldier reported urgently. "The excavation disturbed something deep below." The commander cursed, then pointed to Kira and Lucas. "Bring them. If the legends are true, they may be the key to controlling this reaction." Hauled to their feet, Kira and Lucas exchanged a glance that contained an entire conversation. The destabilization was exactly what they needed, a direct path to the central crystal chamber that had been buried for millennia. As they were marched deeper into the mountain, following emergency sensors that tracked the growing energy disturbance, Lucas and Kira gathered their strength. Through their bond, they shared energy and healing, preparing for the moment that would decide everything. They descended through layers of ancient rock, past crystal formations that grew more elaborate and purposeful with each level. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber, larger than the one they had discovered days earlier, and humming with awakening power. At its center stood a crystalline structure that mirrored the configuration of stars above Virilia, a perfect map of the local galaxy, with two worlds highlighted, Earth and Virilia. "What is this place?" the commander demanded, his confidence faltering before the ancient technology. "The heart of the defense system," Kira answered, her voice resonating strangely in the chamber. "Created when our species faced destruction from a common enemy." "The Void Harbingers," Elder Torvak whispered, ancient fear in his voice. "The enemy our legends say will return when the twin moons align." Lucas felt knowledge flowing to him through the bond, ancestral memories preserved in the crystals. "They're not legends. The alignment happens once every 1,000 years. The last time was Next week, Dr. Marsh confirmed, checking astronomical data on her device. The moons will achieve perfect alignment in 7 days. The Imperial commander laughed coldly. Convenient myths to protect your resources. There are no ancient enemies, only valuable crystals that the Empire will control. As if in response to his words, the entire chamber shuddered. Crystal formations began glowing with increasing intensity, responding to the presence of the bonded pair. The system is activating, Lucas realized. It senses the approaching alignment. Kira met his eyes, understanding flowing between them. This is it. This is why we were bonded. With a sudden surge of strength, they broke free from their captors, moving as one toward the central crystal structure. Imperial soldiers fired at them, but the energy beams were absorbed by the awakening system around them. Stop them, the commander shouted, but it was too late. Kira and Lucas reached the central platform, placing their hands on the activation crystals that perfectly matched those embedded near their hearts. The connection was instantaneous and overwhelming, a flood of knowledge and power that coursed through their bond. Through the crystal network, they could suddenly see everything: the approaching cosmic alignment, the dormant enemy fleet waiting at the edge of their star system, the defense grid that spanned both Earth and Virilia, created by their ancestors to stand against an enemy that fed on divided worlds. The chamber transformed around them, holographic displays activating to show the full extent of the ancient system. Vorii warriors and human scientists alike stared in awe as the truth of their shared history materialized before them. This changes everything, Dr. Marsh breathed, capturing readings on her equipment. The Imperial commander, seeing his mission collapsing, drew his sidearm and aimed at the central console. If I can't have it, no one will. Before he could fire, Elder Torvak tackled him, surprising everyone. Enough. I won't be responsible for dooming both our worlds. As they struggled, the bond between Kira and Lucas reached its full potential. The crystals in their chests pulsed in perfect harmony, sending waves of energy through the ancient system. Dormant defenses across 2 planets hummed to life, creating a shield that would protect both worlds from the approaching threat. It's working, Lucas said in wonder, feeling the system responding to their unified presence. But it needs more, Kira realized, reading the ancient indicators. The bond between us is only the key. The system needs more bonds, more connections between our species, to reach full power. Understanding dawned on the faces around them. This was why the bonding tradition had been preserved in Vorii culture, even as its true purpose was forgotten. It wasn't just for warriors of the same species, it was meant to unite humans and Vorii together against a common threat. The Imperial soldiers, witnessing the awakening of power beyond their comprehension, began backing toward the exit. Their commander, subdued by Torvak and several warriors, could only watch in frustrated rage. We need to spread this knowledge, Lucas said urgently. Both our worlds need to prepare. The Void Harbingers will reach us when the moons align, and they'll find a divided defense. Unless we change that, Kira finished his thought. Turning to the assembled group, she raised her voice. Today we rewrite the history that was hidden from us. Today we remember the alliance that once saved both our worlds. In the days that followed, the news spread across Virilia and to Earth. The corrupt elders were removed from power, replaced by a council that included both species. Imperial forces, faced with evidence of a greater threat and the unified resistance of 2 worlds, retreated to report to their superiors. More human Vorii bonds were formed, not as punishment but as choice, each strengthening the ancient defense grid. Scientists and warriors worked together, rediscovering technologies long forgotten and preparing for the approaching alignment. 7 days later, when the twin moons achieved perfect alignment, the Void Harbingers emerged from the darkness between stars, only to find not the divided, vulnerable worlds they expected, but a unified defense that repelled their first and devastating attack. Standing on a mountain overlook, watching the brief battle unfold in the skies above, Kira and Lucas witnessed the fruits of their forced bond. Distant energy weapons fired from both Earth and Virilia, coordinated through the crystal network they had awakened. "They thought to break me with this bond," Kira said quietly, her hand finding Lucas's as the lights of battle faded from the sky. "Instead, they gave us all, salvation." Lucas squeezed her hand, feeling the perfect resonance between them. Perhaps that's the lesson in all of this. What seems like weakness can become strength. What feels like punishment can become purpose. Around them, other bonded pairs, human and Vorii together, worked to strengthen the planetary defenses. Children of both species played together near the new settlement being built beside the sacred mountains, learning both cultures as their birthright. "What happens now?" Lucas asked, echoing the question he had asked on the night of their forced bonding. Kira smiled, the expression no longer strange on her warrior's face. "Now we build something new. Something stronger than either of us could create alone." The crystals embedded near their hearts pulsed in agreement, a soft glow that symbolized not shame, but the unexpected gift their enemies had given them, a bond that saved two worlds and forged a future neither could have imagined alone. As the twin moons began their slow journey out of alignment, casting long shadows across the united settlement, Kira and Lucas turned toward home, no longer divided by species, no longer defined by difference, but bound together by choice as well as circumstance. The bond forced upon them had become the bond that saved everything.